I see people ordering cars from Japan using crypto. Bitcoin is, something very familiar utility in Japan, and car dealers are accepting it.
Hey, what's up, guys? You're listening to the Grey Ave Podcast, and my name is Grey Jabesi, your host. And the Grey Avenue Podcast is Africa's #1 technology and business podcast, especially when it comes to blockchain and crypto. So if you are one of those people that don't want to be left behind when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution, then this is your podcast to actually subscribe to. So I would recommend you go ahead and subscribe, whether on iTunes or Apple Podcast or on Spotify or SoundCloud, or you can subscribe my website, greyjabesi.com. That's greyjabesi.com, and you'll be notified anytime that I post a new podcast. You can also go back and listen to some of the podcasts that I have done. There's so many great ones out there that I'm sure you definitely pick something from it. So let's get back to today's subject. I have an incredible guest from Uganda, and this is one of the most important people on the continent, especially in Uganda, because he is the chairman of the Blockchain Association of Uganda. His name is Kwame Rugunda. He is the CEO and founder of CryptoSavannah. Kwame is a technology entrepreneur with an interest in emerging technologies, particularly those designed to address the challenges of global development. An electrical engineer and mathematician by training, with experience in telecommunications, civic technology, management consulting for governments, the United Nations, and several private and non-profit organizations throughout Africa. Had an early exposure to the fourth industrial revolution due to interest in technology and innovation, with a particular interest in blockchain and its applications. Keep on making ubiquitous the role of blockchain innovation through Africa, and is the CEO of CryptoSavannah, like I've said, a firm focused on solutions, advisory, and training in blockchain technology. I can go on and on when it comes to Kwame, but I'm just gonna stop it right there. I think by now you have an idea. If you want, you can definitely do some Googling, which I do recommend. And just to put it out there, he also attended Harvard University John F. Kennedy School of Government. So he's a hell of a guy, and in this specific podcast, I spoke to him about what he's doing in Africa, because he's doing a lot, and the state of this blockchain technology. How is Africa embracing it and implementing it, and what are the plans in terms of government and other interesting things, including how he also got started, because in Africa and technology, a lot of people are still disadvantaged, and I'm still amazed when I see a lot of people that have made it big in the technology space, and I'm always curious about how they even got started in all parts of the world. So that's one thing that we spoke about. And just to put it out there, so he is actually CryptoSavannah is behind the Africa Blockchain Conference 2019. I think they did one before where their president, Yoweri Museveni, attended the event. I think it was 2017, if I remember correctly, and Binance also kind of attended, and they ended up, I don't know if this was the reason that Binance had made it to have an exchange in Uganda, which have a fiat pair, basically the local Ugandan currency, with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. I don't know if it was that event, but there's a lot of things happening in Uganda. Uganda is one of those leading countries in Africa when it comes to blockchain. There's a lot going on. So the Africa Blockchain Conference 2019 is happening, and Kwame is one of those guys behind it. The president of Uganda will be there, among other people, including the CEO of Binance, CZ, and a couple of other guys. So I do recommend that you guys check it out if you go to Africa Blockchain. Yeah, it's www.africanblockchain.org, and you see what's happening out there. So I hope you guys enjoy my conversation with Kwame. You can find me on the social medias. Twitter is GreyBTC, Grey with an E, BTC on Instagram, Twitter, and other spaces. So I appreciate you for listening. I'll see you at the end of this episode. Let's begin with your introduction first. Let's introduce you first, and then we can get to it. So if you meet people not at a conference, but say at a dinner event, how do you introduce yourself?
So I mentioned that my name is Kwame Rugunda. I am involved with technology, and it's good to meet you.
Great. You don't go any further than that?
I think it matters. I mean, it matters the type of response that you get back. If it's it ultimately matters the type of person you're interacting with. But I generally, if it's a professional type of setting, I mentioned that people often ask, "What do you do?"
Yes.
I think that's really the trigger question. And so I tell them that I run a technology business where we focus on blockchain and emerging technologies. And then if they ask, tell me more, or what is that about? Then I tell them we focus on three main areas as a business. And one of them is building solutions, software solutions. The other is advisory. And the other is training. And then again, depending on someone's next question or area in which they take interest in, from there we build and continue the conversation.
Right, that is interesting. So if you meet someone in Uganda and they ask you, what is blockchain exactly? I wonder, I've asked this question to a couple of people, and there's some who tell us some stories. Seems like everyone have their own explanation of it to make people understand in different contexts. So if you meet an average person who is not really into tech at an event or on the streets, how do you break down what blockchain is to them?
So the way I would break it down is maybe using the analogy of the internet, which many are familiar with. And I just mentioned to them that the internet has enabled us exchange information electronically, and what blockchain is enabling us, or what blockchain is that it's a method, a way in which not just information but actually valuable information can be exchanged. Where valuable information could mean money, could mean contracts, etc. And then, depending, of course, on someone's response, then we can talk about how record keeping works or how a ledger works, and centralized versus decentralized. And you sort of, again, work to meet them from their point of comfort.
Right. So your company is CryptoSavannah. How did you guys get started in Uganda? Oh, I think let's just take it back a little bit. What was your first job?
That's a good one. So my first job, aside from, these chores at home and work in family type of things, I think the real work I first did was in my senior for vacation. I was collecting surveys. And this is interesting that you're calling from South Africa because we were collecting surveys at the time. This was in the mid-90s, collecting surveys about what was the most popular song in the country. And so I'd walked into a radio station and I asked them I want a job. And they said, we're looking for some people to collect surveys on the most popular song. So they gave me a bunch of sheets of paper. And I walked around the city asking everyone what their favorite song was. And interestingly, it was a South African song, a song by a South African artist, Lucky Dube.
Right.
And the most popular song at the time was called Kiss No Frog. So that was my first job.
Okay, that was in Uganda?
Yes, this was in Uganda.
All right. And then at that time, were you already done with your, secondary school studies? At what point in time was that? And what were you thinking that your future was going to be consist with? Working in radio?
No. So at the time, I really just wanted. I was done with my first my O levels, and so it was a long vacation we had in O levels, and I really just wanted to be able to work and see what's out there in the world. and to earn some money as well. And so I walked into the radio station, and that's how it began. But I knew that I had applied to do sciences in my A-level, so I knew that I would subsequently do something in sciences. And then eventually when I got to uni, I did engineering, electrical engineering, and then, from there progressed gradually to where I am today.
Okay, so you went to Harvard and John F. Kennedy School of Business, was it?
Yeah, so I did my master's degree at Harvard, at the Kennedy School of Government. And that's where I did a master's in public administration. But I'd previously done my undergrad in engineering, which is the one I'm referring to. And then also did a degree in mathematics, one in an MBA, and then that recent one, the one you're mentioning at Harvard, in public administration.
If you're from Uganda or any other country in Africa, and when you're overseas, it's different. I wonder what you were thinking when you were, say, 13 years old, that your future was going to be like while in Uganda.
I had been exposed relatively early to computer games. And at that time, we had friends who were playing computer games, and we had a computer in school. So I sort of thought it would be something around the area of computers, because there was a lot of creativity that we could see being enabled. And over the years, that grew into an interest. And then when I studied computer and then in electrical engineering in school, sort of gradually began developing that. And as we progressed, when I worked in engineering and telecoms, I did work in that space. And then gradually in our engineering work, that's when I stumbled upon Bitcoin. And then it opened doors to do a couple of things, which is where we are today in the blockchain and crypto space.
And I mean, I was waiting for this part of Bitcoin and blockchain. Now that you're from Uganda, I know you do consulting, and you've worked with governments and different types of institutions in Uganda and in Africa in general. What do you think Bitcoin is unlocking within the continent? And also, what have you noticed as the perception of this technology from the government perspective?
You've asked a loaded question, but I'll try to break it into bite sizes.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. I think the opportunity is largely not yet appreciated, not yet understood. And so I'll sort of respond chronologically from where you began and then end on the government side. The opportunity is really revolutionary. If one thinks about, I can just speak about mobile money and the impact that it has had in East Africa. I live in Uganda, a country that has a population of about 45 million people. And until the revolution that was seen by mobile phones, we had about 3 million bank accounts that were being run by 24, 25 banks in the country, in a population of 45 million people now. But when the mobile money or the mobile telephone sparked, it was able to enable for anybody who was an adult to have a mobile phone in their hands. And then in comes the picture of mobile money. That significantly grew the number of people who had access to financial services from about 3 million to about 21 million suddenly, because everyone who had a mobile phone could now use mobile money. So therefore, it significantly increased by several hundred percentage points. It significantly increased the number of people who had access to both financial services, but also the entire ecosystem, because it included people into many other things. So therefore, mobile revolution and subsequently mobile money revolution have done so much more to increase inclusion of people. But that having been said, it also still has its limits. It has its significant strengths, which I've just pointed out, but it also has its limits. Its limits are largely around the fact that it is a bit expensive. It doesn't enable for certain types of transactions, like micropayments. Someone cannot go into the market and buy a tomato or a an orange using mobile money because it does not make sense. So where I see Bitcoin, and in particular the crypto revolution, being able to add value is that blockchain enables for the same things to be done for significantly cheaper. And because it can be done for a lot cheaper, it then increases the inclusion because many more people can participate, and micropayments and things like that can be done. Industries like remittance and money payments will be significantly, or are being significantly, disrupted. So I see Bitcoin, or more so the entire crypto revolution, being able to close that gap, close the last mile component, which mobile money was not yet able to do. Then on to your last point of how governments are reacting. I look at many governments around the world that are responding differently. There are those that are quick to embrace, and then there are unfortunately those that are quick to ban. I think those that are quick to ban are making a big mistake because they are stifling innovation that is happening around the sector. And those that are quick to embrace, many are embracing gradually, taking time to understand, gradually embrace. Unfortunately, there's also this attack by Ponzi schemes around the world, which are claiming to be crypto. It's misleading. It's creating a wrong understanding. And so those of us who have a correct understanding in the industry really need to step up our game and work with policymakers such that the Ponzi schemes can be, kicked out, but also citizens can really understand what blockchain is, what crypto is, what the opportunity is, what the risks are. And that is sort of where I would want things to be. Our own government has taken interest in the area. We have sandboxes being set up in the different regulatory bodies. We have a task force in the country that's looking into it. We have a private sector that's striving to explore it. So I'm glad that Uganda is one of the more progressive ones, and the conference that you're familiar with last year put us on the map, and so we're continuing to leverage the dividends that granted us.
From the government perspective, I'm still curious to know about, say, in Uganda, what are they thinking that they're going to regulate something like Bitcoin as? Because I do OTC trading. So I'm seeing an increasing number of a lot of people in the diaspora who are trying to send money back home. The remittances are now jumping onto Bitcoin network. They're finding Bitcoin there and send it out to their countries, and then you'll find the vendor who has liquidity to convert the money into fiat. But then there isn't clear regulations in those areas in terms of what government think those things are, or better yet, what do you think the current systems, the current financial system of the financial networks have failed to achieve, say, low fees transactions and instant at the same time?
So the current, you're talking about remittances, the current payments and transfer system, as we know, cost-wise range between like 12 to 30%.
Yeah,
and that is pretty steep. Bitcoin and crypto can enable that to be significantly cheaper. So I think that, like you, who is benefiting, and many others on the continent that are benefiting from remittance systems pegged around crypto, are realizing this. But the central or the regulatory bodies and governments are still trying to make sense of it, and are still concerned about the various discussions on money laundering and so on. I think those are some of the concerns that they're raising. I also think that the established payment systems are fighting back because they recognize the disruption that's on the horizon. But I think it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before there's correct understanding that's developed, before the space for innovation is enabled, is allowed, before the governments and regulatory bodies get a better understanding such that they can separate the AML concerns from the opportunity that crypto presents. So I think what is happening right now is a streamlining of understanding, such that we can bring in the great benefits that this new technology is enabling, while, of course, addressing and mitigating the risks.
Right. And in terms of anything else that's going on, what are you mostly excited about from an African perspective?
Yes, I'm mostly excited about as an African continent, blockchain is going to do some big things for us. In South Africa, you know quite well that President Ramaphosa has been a great advocate of our African continental free trade area. And so now we have about 95% of the African countries signed onto it, 52 out of 55 countries. So what is going to happen is that we'll in no time have the largest free trade area in the world. And once you have that 90% tariffs lowered because it's a common market, it's going to be significantly easier for goods and services to be traded on the continent. Now that is very powerful because intra-African trade has been very low. And once you have a continental trade area that is ratified, that is put in place, and then you have technological innovations that are enabling for value, for money to be transferred from one country to another for significantly cheaper, that is going to boost Africa's economic growth. So that's what I am excited about.
Right. So I'm also excited about that. I mean, peer-to-peer finance, it seems like it's going to be a huge thing. It's going to be really revolutionary in terms of cross-border payments and stuff like that. But then the question is also that things like that take time, especially when it comes to governments. They take very long time to develop things. Say, if they make that deal and it comes to fruition, the time it's going to take for them to develop, say, their own currency to make this work might be a very long time, and then people have to trade right now. Do you think if Bitcoin becomes something that most people begin to use so much, whether the currency is going to be Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency that's not issued by the African Union or whatever governing body they're going to have, how do you think they can regulate around something like Bitcoin?
So I think that I share your view. I don't think it will be Bitcoin. I think it will be another crypto, and I would see them sort of taking more interest in a stable coin that is pegged to an African asset, whether it is our gold or something. So I think that it will be crypto. It will be a stable coin. I think it will be issued by some form of central authority. That will be the basis upon which many nations will be able to accept it. And I think once you have acceptance at leadership levels, it will greatly penetrate into the market. I think on your point of time, I look at how much has been accomplished over the last few years. I'm not really concerned that it's going to take a very long time. If I look at how far this continental free trade area that we are speaking about just now, how quickly it is also happening, it's also moving significantly fast. The internet is enabling everyone to have knowledge now. So decisions can be made a lot quicker. Information is widely and abundantly available. And this is how decisions are going to be made. So I think that things are going to happen a lot faster than we're actually thinking.
Yeah, that's great to hear. That's refreshing. I can't wait to a point where I think, what I've realized over the years is that Africans are actually more keen to trade than any other people in the world right now. That, Africans like doing business. I've learned this just by doing the OTC trades and stuff, looking at the interest in what people do, when they have the ability to move money faster, within borders, there's so much they can accomplish. So the power of intertrade is going to be so amazing. So you guys in Uganda now, you've got Binance launched over there, and you have a fiat pair, apparently. How is that working? And what is the volume of people getting into cryptocurrencies? And I wonder, what are the banks' positions? Is it relatively easy to work with the banks and the crypto exchanges there?
But in order for any of these to happen, the banks have also been participating. So the largest bank is on board, making it happen. So I think that the ground has been broken. The testing / trial phase is what I believe is happening. as it's being done by Binance and the mobile telcos. Of course, the banks on board because they have to enable that to happen. But once it goes into another gear after the basic integrations and testing is happening, where banks will be brought on board, seeing how Binance can expand it to other African countries, I think the full effect of Binance is just about to be really felt in Africa.
All right, and it's exciting that that happened in Uganda. I think your government is pretty vested on these things, eh?
Yeah, I think the conference that you know about, the fact that we had a head of state there gave it a lot of weight, and that weight translates into systems responding accordingly. So I believe that was quite a big deal, and that, in my opinion, was a key factor in Binance's decision making. Uganda's readiness to explore this area, and that readiness being expressed from the highest levels of decision making in the country.
And what are Ugandans using these cryptocurrencies for? What are the main use cases from what you have seen?
So I'm seeing, there are traders. There are people who are trading. I see people ordering cars from Japan using crypto. Bitcoin is, something very familiar utility in Japan, and car dealers are accepting it. But I also see a lot of people developing applications that have utility in health, in agriculture, operational efficiency, land registries. I'm sort of seeing many proofs of concept being developed.
Right, and are you familiar with some of those companies that accept Bitcoin to buy cars?
Yes, there's one in Uganda that's known, one of the car dealerships, one of the auto trading companies.
Okay, that is very interesting. What's the name of the company?
Car and General Auto.
Okay, I had no idea that's I knew that Nigerians are able to get Bitcoin and buy cars from the States and ship it back home. I didn't know that it's already happening in Africa as well. I mean, in Southern Africa or East Africa. So, just lastly, what are your thoughts looking forward internationally now with this technology, especially from the cryptocurrency side of things, looking at what's going on? It seems like STOs are going to be the new thing. Maybe this year it's going to be a trend or some sort. What do you think this year? What's your forecast?
Yeah, I definitely see a lot on the STO space. I see a quietness on the ICO side. I see stable coins, some war amongst the stable coins really happening. We saw the challenges with Tether and so on. So I see stability. There's been a lot of excitement, a lot of bluff, but now I see, more stable and resilient parties participating. Just like the point you made earlier about the attendance of the blockchain conference in South Africa. Mm-hmm. I think the jokers are being separated and the industry is stabilizing.
All right. And very lastly, so for a lot of Africans that are listening to you right now, they heard of this technology, but they don't even know where to begin because it's not available in the universities. How can one begin so that they can get involved in this global financial network?
So I would point to a couple of areas. First of all, you just mentioned universities. Interestingly, I know a couple of universities that are beginning to teach courses in their engineering programs or in their computer science programs. So these are more focused on people learning software. But also, I know that in many cities, there are meetups. There are a lot of meetups that are happening within the blockchain and crypto communities. I think one can get engaged there. There's a lot of information online. Of course, there's also a lot of fake information. So one needs to develop the ability to sift the wheat from the chaff. But as one begins to look into it, you'll really learn more and plug in with the local communities in various cities. Because there's a lot happening in innovation. There's a lot happening in the crypto space in various cities: Cape Town, Pretoria, Joburg, Kampala, Lagos, Nairobi, all over the world. And the more one can plug into these communities, the better. Fellow people, you can learn a lot online, but it's also priceless spending time with people and just finding out what they're actually doing. And we should also, let's get rid of these Ponzi schemes. I think these guys are destroying the opportunity that is out there for us. So people should totally refrain from Ponzi schemes. I think they're a bad thing for our society and they're fleecing people off. So the more those of us who have some knowledge continue to spend time with others, the more people begin to really learn what blockchain and the real opportunity is, the more we refrain and kick out the Ponzi schemes, the better it is for the ecosystem. And once the ecosystem is thriving, the future is really bright.
The Ponzi scheme thing is really, really disastrous right now. I've seen people who buy Bitcoin from me, for example, and and they tell you that they're going to invest it somewhere, and that where they're taking the money is a Ponzi scheme, right? And it's really difficult to make them understand that, look, you can use your Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency you have for other uses, or if you want, you can just hold it. And I'm at a position where, to me, it's a business also. I have to sell Bitcoins to them. I got referred by someone else who I did business with. On that situation, what would you do? It's like you're in the middle of two different opposing interests.
Yeah, ultimately, to try our best as possible to advise our friends, loved ones, and colleagues. Anything that looks like a black box, most likely it is a black box.
Right.
Anything that just sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. So it's probably not true at all. So if we need to be informed in our decision making. It is just not right for me to invest my school fees. It is just not right for me to invest my life savings in something that I do not understand. I think the least I can do, I must take the initiative to understand what this thing is. Someone cannot tell me to give them X amount of money and they'll give me 10X in 2 months. I must be informed in my decision making. And so I would really encourage all of us to take a moment to understand the opportunity that crypto presents, but also just to make to exercise judicious decision making. Let's make judgments that are carefully considered. Let us invest a little bit. Let us understand where we're putting our money. Let us not put our life savings in. Let us endeavor to be conservative as we engage with investment opportunities. Let us not rush into them because we can get scarred really badly.
Awesome. I think we can end it on that point. I don't want to waste too much of your time. Thank you so much for taking this time, Kwame. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad we could speak, and let's continue growing this ecosystem.
Awesome. Have a good day further.
All right. Take care then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello once again, and that was the end of our conversation. And just before you go, just want to communicate a few things with you quickly. If you have enjoyed any of the podcasts or this specific podcast episode, I would appreciate it if you share it with your friends and family through your social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc., as well as write me a 5-star review on iTunes or Apple Podcast app. That would be fantastic. It helps me flourish and sustain this podcast as well. We also on other platforms like SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and all other major podcast platforms. So whichever way you're listening to it, I would appreciate it if you leave me a review. You can also subscribe to the Grey Ave Podcast through my website, greyjabesi.com, greyjabesi.com. There you also find some of the blogs that I'm writing sometimes, and you get notified as soon as the new episode has been published. Until next time, enjoy and be productive. Thank you.